Yo, what up, YouTube? I used to hate my fucking life. This video is about trauma. We're going to be diving into your trauma. And I had some trauma, but it drove me to building a multiple six-figure company at 22. As you can see, in the last week, we've made just over 7 grand, and we're on pace to do about 20 grand this month in cash collected with my online agency while being a college student. But it wasn't always this way. I hated my fucking life, my job, my income. And what set off this chain reaction for me to become an entrepreneur was my grandmother passed away, and I missed her birthday due to working a job that I fucking hated. It was a big hit to my ego, but it was something that also set off a chain reaction to me and pushed me to building the company that I have now, the six-figure agency, while in college. So in this video, we're going to dive into how you could use this trauma as fuel to genuinely become an absolute lethal weapon in whatever endeavors that you're going to set upon, whether it's academics, business, entrepreneurship, or a mix of both, like myself. Let's dive in. Trauma, we have to understand from 3 perspectives: neurological, unconscious, and psychological. And the first thing you need to understand with trauma is how it affects your nervous system. You've probably heard of your nervous system before. The nervous system is broken up into 2 branches, the central nervous system and the PNS, which is the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is just responsible for sending information throughout the body. Peripheral nervous system is everything surrounding that. The peripheral nervous system is then also broken up into another 2 branches, somatic and autonomic. Everything fight or flight, trauma response goes with this autonomic branch. Specifically, it breaks into 2 more branches, fight or flight. When you have trauma or you've grown up in chaos or you've had a very strong sensory stimulus like I had myself that invokes a response in you, your fight or flight system stays on. And this parasympathetic, the rest and digest part, which is aka, like I said, the parasympathetic, your body biologically and physiologically deems this as unsafe. So anything calm feels unsafe. So you're just kind of more hardwired in a more vigilant state because your fight or flight is much more wired compared to the average person and the average baseline. Now, I know this looks like a bunch of pessimism. We'll definitely go into how you can become a lethal weapon and whatever you're doing later in the video. Also, there's a part of your brain called the amygdala. That's the fear and threat center. This becomes hypersensitive. You become much more sensitive to any kind of threatening stimulus towards yourself because you've been hardwired that way. Your prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for attention, working memory, decision making, habit, not directly habit formation, but other parts of decision making, that gets weaker, and your cortisol baseline increases as well. Also, neurons. You've probably heard of neurons before if you took a biology or psychology class in college or high school. Your neurons fire and they replay the scene of what happened in your mind. And if you think of what happened, what comes up when you think of what happened, that shitty thing that's happened or happened to you? The emotions come up. Those emotions send signals called neurotransmitters. The most common known neurotransmitter is dopamine. Dudes watch porn or scroll on Instagram, they get a lot of fucking dopamine, but that's not the right dopamine. You're just doing the same thing. You're replaying these memories in your mind, and you're now not wiring your neurons as well for survival. We just went over neurological. Let's jump into the unconscious. So trauma also, now we're jumping into the unconscious perspective here. Trauma also shapes your identity. And the best way to look at trauma, your psyche as a whole, what makes up you as an individual and the things that you want, need, and are deprived of and have ambition for, is you can think of your psyche as kind of like a boardroom. And there's a bunch of members at the table that make up your psyche, and they have a bunch of needs ranging from logic to emotion to ambition to love to belonging to fulfillment to validation to deprivation. They have all of these individual needs, and your life starts to go in haywire, and your unconscious and your shadow start to manifest in your life in negative ways when these needs are not being met. So if you have love that's not being met, deprivation and validation that's not being met, your unconscious is going to start to communicate this to you in a multifaceted number of ways. For example, if you are deprived, you're going to feel more of an urgency to work. If you need validation and that unmet person here, that unmet need is there, you're also going to kind of feel more of an urgency to study, to grind, to create out of that state there. So one thing is making sure that all these people at the boardroom table are met. And also, most people don't even know what people at the boardroom are making decisions for them either. A lot of times when you have an impulse or a craving, it's just your unconscious that was not met in the past communicating some kind of present need that it needs right now. Now, over time, this table of boardroom members that makes up your psyche eventually becomes your drive. And as more time goes on, you have an increase of needs. This is the traumatic people kind of graph. The unmet hunger becomes drive. Over time, your needs and time, they increase sequentially, whatever that word is, where simultaneously they increase both together. So as time goes on, your needs increase, but most people don't meet these needs. So this is how kind of the unconscious can create an absolutely bulletproof and ruthless entrepreneur, because you have such a higher threshold for drive, and someone else's baseline might be right here. Their needs might be right here, but someone who's been through some shit, their baseline is going to be right here. So them standing normally, them just chilling, going through life, they're not going to be above the water. They're not going to be above the baseline. They're psychologically going to be drowning. Their needs aren't going to be met. Compared to someone else who hasn't been through much, they'll probably be above those needs there. So to sum up this unconscious section, this is why high performers come from pain, because they have a much larger boardroom table. They have a much larger range of members that make up their psyche. They have a much larger table of needs. And also, compared to someone else, their baseline is much higher, and this unmet hunger becomes drive. So someone who's had some shit dealt with them, they're going to have a much higher need for, validation. They're going to have much higher levels of deprivation, fulfillment, belonging, and love. And a lot of times we find that through work. The beautiful thing about this as well is trauma wires you in a more urgency matter, or just a strong sensory stimulus that you have. It's going to allow you to better scan for opportunities. And that's because your fight or flight nervous system is more active. And also you're going to have that natural, more so I guess you could say innate hunger in you to go out and strive for something that's bigger than yourself. You're going to have that drive to go out and create. And compared to maybe someone who hasn't been through as much as you have a higher level of standard as well, psychologically and subconsciously. Your standards are these. Your standards are the people at the boardroom table. So it's either you meet their needs or negative consequences are going to happen and manifest in your life unconsciously. So we don't rise to the expectations and the dreams that we have. Rather, human psychology has shown us time and time again through a lot of the psychoanalytic figures like Freud, Carl Jung, Glasser, that we just fall to the lowest standard that we have. But if your standard is meeting all the needs of the people at this table, and then having a higher drive level than other people, and just having a higher drive level than average, you're going to go above and beyond in whatever endeavors that you decide to do. So the pain is ultimately the thing that becomes the fuel. And what makes you an absolutely ruthless entrepreneur, or a ruthless student, or a ruthless creator, is the work becomes the therapy. The work is where you meet all these individual needs that you have. Someone like myself, where I'm about to do 20K cash collected this month, made 7K this week. Someone like myself, when I was working that job, and when I missed that moment with my family, I was in a state of deprivation, and that sensory stimulus was so strong that my neurons just went haywire, and I fired so many signals associated with that. But now, at the same time, I have a much higher baseline need for comfort. So someone's baseline need might be 3K a month, 5K a month. My baseline comfort need is 20 to 30 grand a month in income. It's $1,000 a day. So that's where this can become a superpower. It's because you meet these needs through work. So if you're ever feeling distressed, if you're ever feeling out of it, if this unconscious ever starts to manifest, then you know deep down, and I know deep down, and you know deep down, if you had some shit happen to you, that you could go back to the one thing in your life which will always be there for you, and which will always comfort this unconscious side of you, which is the work. Because through the work, you're going to get the validation, because over time you're going to build something big, and your ambition is going to be brought forth, and you're going to make more money, and you're not going to feel as deprived, and your baseline needs are going to be met. And then you're going to find fulfillment through the work as well, because it's not just then from a state of pain, but you start to enjoy serving your clients, and you start to enjoy creating, and you start to enjoy building this business, building this academic career, whatever that might be. You're not doing the work for success. You're doing the work for this inner child inside of you and this table of boardroom members that has unmet needs, because the best way to satisfy all of these people is through the fucking work. The beautiful thing about this as well is, and this is where I'm going to kind of cap this off, is as you begin to work through this trauma in your life, and this might manifest in an abundance of ways, your neural pathways literally rewire. And we call this in psychology neuronal or neuroplasticity. And it's the strengthening of connections in your brain. Eventually, as you work and as you put this pain that you have and this need level that you have into work, you're eventually over time going to become the person that perceives what happened to them no longer from a negative outlook, from a positive outlook. You're going to perceive that from the thing that got you to where you are. And that's what we call, like I mentioned in the video earlier, post-traumatic growth. So you're going to rewire your neurology. You're going to rewire yourself from an unconscious level. And then, like I said, psychologically tying this all together, this is where it comes. The unconscious and the neurology, they go hand in hand here. So with that being said, the unconscious inside of you is the ultimate driving force you have to create something fucking magnificent. And don't just, think this is some bullshit. Take it from myself. You just hate my fucking life. We're going to do 20K this month. I have no doubt we're going to be at 30K in the next few months as well with the business. And that can be you as well. So a message and a moment of encouragement for you also. You're not broken. There's not, some kind of dysfunction. There's not something wrong with you. You could put this into work and you could genuinely build something magnificent in your life. And then from a psychological level, you could rewire the neurons in your brain to fire in association and in accordance to the work that you're doing. And you could genuinely experience healing out of it, because these board members' needs are going to be met through the fucking work. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, subscribe. More is coming out. That's really it. Thank you guys. Also, I unplugged my mic, but whatever. If you have some kind of trauma, I'm all for therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, some psychoanalytic therapy people have found healthy as well. So, bro, I'm not a psychologist. This video is for entertainment purposes. I'm gonna just throw this in there. But yeah, go to therapy, see a professional, see a doctor if you're really feeling some negative way. You know what I mean? Don't just be an idiot and work yourself to the ground.